You worked decades to own your home. You thought it was finally yours. But every year, the tax bill climbs higher. And suddenly, the house you already paid off is draining your retirement. Property taxes are forcing thousands of Americans out of homes they own outright. Average bills exceeding $9,000. Assessments climbing 15% in a single year. Retirees choosing between medication and tax payments. This is not a future warning. It is happening right now. Today, we are exposing 12 states where property taxes are pushing homeowners to flee. Before it is too late. Number 12, we have got Connecticut. Connecticut sells itself as a quiet New England escape. Charming colonial homes, tree-lined streets, historic villages with white church steeples dotting the landscape. Yale University, Mystic Seaport, the kind of postcard imagery that belongs on real estate brochures. But beneath that picture-perfect surface is a property tax system that is silently crushing homeowners who believed the dream. The average property tax bill in Connecticut comes in at $6,153 per year. That is one of the highest in America. For retirees who planned everything down to the dollar, this is the hidden cost nobody warned them about. They budgeted for mortgage payoffs. They budgeted for health care. They never budgeted for property taxes that rival monthly paychecks. The median household income in Connecticut sits at around $79,000. That sounds comfortable on paper, until you realize property taxes alone consume nearly 8% of gross income for the average homeowner. For those on fixed incomes, the math becomes impossible. Social Security checks do not grow fast enough to keep up with assessments that climb year after year. Pension payments stay flat while tax bills balloon. Towns like Bridgeport, Hartford, and New Haven carry some of the highest mill rates in the entire state. In Bridgeport specifically, the effective property tax rate exceeds 4%. Do the math on that. A home worth $300,000 generates a tax bill over $12,000 annually. Homeowners who paid off their mortgages decades ago are now facing bills larger than their original monthly payments ever were. They escaped the bank only to become prisoners of the tax assessor. Walk through any Connecticut suburb, and you will see the quiet exodus happening in real time. For sale signs sit on manicured lawns for months. Estate sales appear in neighborhoods where families once planned to stay forever. Moving trucks arrive on weekends. Retirees who dreamed of aging in place are packing up and heading south. Not because they want to leave, because they cannot afford to stay another year. The state budget depends heavily on property tax revenue to fund schools and local services. But that dependency has created a trap with no escape. As wealthier residents leave, the tax base shrinks. Towns respond by raising rates on those who remain, which pushes more people to leave, which shrinks the tax base further. It is a vicious cycle with no end in sight. And for anyone still holding on to a Connecticut home, the question is brutally simple. How long can you afford to stay? At number 11, Vermont. Vermont promises small-town charm unlike anywhere else in America. Covered bridges spanning quiet rivers, fresh maple syrup from family farms, ski slopes that draw tourists from around the world, autumn foliage so stunning it appears on calendars and screensavers. But for homeowners who actually live there year-round, Vermont delivers something entirely different. A property tax burden that rivals states with twice the income levels. The average Vermont homeowner pays $4,994 in property taxes annually. That might sound manageable compared to Connecticut, but consider the context. The median household income in Vermont is just $63,000. That means property taxes eat up nearly 8% of household income before a single other bill gets paid. Before groceries, before health care, before heating oil that Vermont winters absolutely demand. Rural communities that once seemed like affordable escapes are now drowning under assessment increases. In towns like Brattleboro and Bennington, home values have not kept pace with tax increases. Residents find themselves in a nightmare scenario, paying more in taxes while their equity stagnates or even declines. The dream of owning a peaceful country home has become a financial trap that closes tighter every year. Vermont has one of the oldest populations in America. Over 20% of residents are 65 or older. Many came here decades ago expecting to retire peacefully. These are exactly the people least able to absorb rising property taxes. Fixed incomes do not stretch no matter how hard you budget. Retirement savings dwindle faster than anyone planned, and selling becomes the only remaining option. The state has tried relief programs, homestead exemptions, property tax credits, income-based adjustments. But the formulas are complicated and the savings rarely keep pace with annual increases. For every dollar saved through credits, 2 more appear on next year's assessment notice. The affordable rural dream Vermont promised? It is anything but affordable for anyone actually trying to live it year after year. Now at number 10, New Hampshire. Live free or die. That is New Hampshire's famous motto, and for decades, it attracted residents fleeing high-tax states with its seductive promise. No state income tax, no sales tax. Financial freedom in the Granite State. The marketing worked beautifully, but here is what the brochures conveniently never mention. New Hampshire has to fund its government somehow, and that funding comes almost entirely from property taxes levied directly on homeowners. The average New Hampshire homeowner pays $6,097 per year in property taxes. That puts the state firmly in the top 5 nationally. For a state that aggressively markets itself as tax-friendly, this is the hidden trap waiting for anyone who actually buys a home there. The freedom they advertise comes with fine print that costs $6,000 every single year. Consider someone relocating from Massachusetts to escape Boston's crushing cost of living. They buy a home in southern New Hampshire, maybe Manchester or Nashua. The purchase price looks reasonable compared to what they left behind. No income tax means a bigger paycheck every 2 weeks. They feel smart, like they beat the system. But then the first property tax bill arrives in the mail, and suddenly those savings they calculated evaporate into municipal budgets. Towns across New Hampshire rely almost exclusively on property taxes to fund schools, maintain roads, and provide emergency services. There simply is no other major revenue source. When budgets need to rise, there is nowhere else to turn. Mill rates climb steadily, assessments increase to match rising home values, and homeowners watch helplessly as their tax bills balloon year after year with no ceiling in sight. Retirees face the worst of it. They moved to New Hampshire expecting low costs and peaceful golden years. Instead, they find themselves paying the equivalent of a second mortgage just to stay in homes they already own outright. Many are now selling at a loss just to escape before things get worse. The live free or die state is becoming pay up or leave, and thousands are choosing to leave every single year. But that is nothing compared to what is coming. The next few states might shock you. These are not backwater economies or forgotten corners of America. They are states with famous cities, national reputations, and millions of residents who thought they were safe. Coming in at number 9, Wisconsin. Wisconsin represents Heartland America at its most authentic. Dairy farms stretching to the horizon. Friday night fish fries. Green Bay Packers football that borders on religion. Hardworking families who believed in stability and reward for effort. But property taxes averaging $4,194 per year are crushing those families. And the pain intensifies every assessment cycle. Manufacturing towns across Wisconsin once promised something real. Steady jobs with union wages. Affordable homeownership within reach of anyone willing to work. Buy a modest house. Raise a family in a safe neighborhood. Retire comfortably on pension and savings. That was the generational deal. But factories closed in waves. Jobs vanished overseas or to automation. And property taxes kept climbing anyway, completely disconnected from economic reality. Cities like Milwaukee and Racine carry some of the highest effective tax rates anywhere in the Midwest. A home worth $250,000 can easily generate annual tax bills exceeding $5,000. That is over $400 every single month before any other housing cost. For families already stretched thin by stagnant wages and rising prices, this becomes the breaking point that shatters budgets. Drive through Wisconsin's suburbs today, and you will see foreclosure signs appearing on streets that once felt completely untouchable. Neighborhoods where families lived for 3 and 4 generations are now hollowing out. The combination of stagnant wages and relentlessly rising taxes has created an affordability crisis hiding in plain sight. People see cheap listing prices and miss the tax burden attached to every deed. Wisconsin does offer some property tax credits, but the relief provided is marginal at best. Credits of a few $100s do absolutely nothing when bills climb by $1,000 or more each year. Homeowners are not asking for handouts or special treatment. They are asking a simple question. Why do taxes keep rising when services keep shrinking? And nobody in Madison seems to have an answer that makes sense. Number 8 brings us to Nebraska. Nebraska is the agricultural backbone of America itself. Endless cornfields and soybean rows stretching beyond what eyes can see. Family farms passed down through 4 and 5 generations of the same bloodline. A work ethic that quite literally built the heartland into the breadbasket of the world. But property taxes averaging $3,892 per year are forcing families off land their great-grandparents originally settled with their own hands. Agricultural property faces pressure unlike anything residential owners understand. Farmland values have climbed dramatically, even as commodity prices fluctuate wildly from season to season. When county assessors value agricultural land based on recent speculative sales rather than actual productive farming capacity, working farmers get absolutely crushed. A family scraping by on razor-thin profit margins suddenly owes taxes based on what developers might theoretically pay, not what the land actually earns growing corn or raising cattle. Retirees in cities like Omaha and Lincoln face their own version of this crisis. Property values rose dramatically through the pandemic as remote workers flooded in from coastal cities. Assessments followed those values upward without mercy. And suddenly, longtime homeowners find themselves paying bills they never budgeted for and cannot afford. Fixed incomes do not magically adjust when tax assessors unilaterally decide your home is worth 30% more than last year. The state legislature in Lincoln debates property tax reforms almost constantly. Proposals come and go with every session, but meaningful change never quite arrives. School districts need funding to operate. Counties need revenue for roads and services, and property owners remain the path of least resistance. Every year, the bills climb higher. Every year, more families decide enough is enough. Nebraska's population growth has stalled almost completely. Property taxes are a major reason why talented young people leave and never come back. Isn't it strange how states loudly promise no income tax, but never mention the property taxes that drain your wallet anyway? Drop a comment below. I genuinely want to know what you think about this shell game. At number 7, Texas. Texas became the promised land for millions fleeing California and the Northeast during the pandemic years. No state income tax whatsoever. Affordable housing compared to where they came from. Business-friendly regulations that attracted major employers. Warm weather and wide-open spaces. The marketing worked perfectly and the moving trucks rolled in by the thousands. But nobody mentioned what was waiting on the other side. Property tax bills that are swallowing the very savings people relocated for. The average Texas homeowner pays $4,425 in property taxes annually. That number alone is already concerning. But in booming cities like Austin, Dallas, and Houston, bills have literally doubled in under a decade. Homes purchased for $200,000 just years ago now carry assessments above $400,000, and tax bills have followed that trajectory without any ceiling. The promise of affordable Texas living is collapsing under its own success. What makes Texas particularly brutal is the stacking effect. School districts, city governments, county governments, hospital districts, community college districts, and special municipal utility districts all pile their levies onto the same property tax bill. In some areas of Texas, the combined effective rate exceeds 2.5% of assessed value. That means a home worth $300,000 generates annual taxes over $7,500 every single year, forever, with no end in sight. Longtime Texans face the most jarring shock of all. People who bought modest homes 20 or 30 years ago for $80,000 now owe taxes on properties assessed at $350,000 or more. Their incomes certainly did not triple over that time, but their tax obligations absolutely did. Seniors on fixed incomes can legally defer payment through homestead exemptions, but the taxes still accumulate against the property. Eventually, someone has to pay that balance. The freedom Texas promised is quietly becoming a different kind of trap. You escaped state income taxes only to pay them through your property instead. The money still leaves your pocket. It just takes a different route. And for anyone currently holding a Texas home, the trajectory ahead is painfully clear. Bills will keep climbing with assessments. Assessments will keep rising with values. And the exit doors to other states are getting more crowded every year. If this helps you understand what is really happening in the economy, hit subscribe. It is completely free, and it means you will never miss these critical breakdowns when they matter most. Number 6 takes us to Rhode Island. Rhode Island is America's smallest state by land area, but its property tax burden is anything but small. Average annual taxes hit $4,755. And for working families trapped in a stagnant housing market that refuses to cooperate, there is simply no escape from the squeeze. Home values in Rhode Island have barely moved in over a decade, while property taxes kept climbing every single year regardless. Homeowners find themselves in perhaps the worst possible financial position. They owe more in taxes every year without fail, but their home equity stays completely flat. Selling means breaking, even at best after agent commissions and closing costs. Staying means bleeding cash you genuinely cannot afford to lose. Cities like Providence and Warwick carry effective tax rates approaching 2% of assessed value annually. For a modest home worth $250,000, that translates to $5,000 per year in property taxes alone. Before homeowners insurance premiums, before maintenance and repairs, before anything else associated with actually owning property. The postcard-perfect New England coastline hides neighborhoods in genuine crisis. For sale signs sit in front yards for months without generating serious offers. Families who tried unsuccessfully to sell 5 years ago still cannot sell today at any reasonable price. The market moves in agonizing slow motion, while tax bills accelerate past what anyone can reasonably afford. Rhode Island's economy depends heavily on healthcare and higher education employment. These are sectors dominated by tax-exempt nonprofit institutions that do not pay property taxes at all. The entire burden falls disproportionately on residential and commercial property owners who have no exemptions. And as businesses flee for cheaper states with less burden, remaining homeowners shoulder even more of the load. The Ocean State is becoming a place where owning property means watching your wealth drain steadily into public budgets you cannot control. Most people have absolutely no idea this is happening across America. Stick around because number 1 is worse than you can possibly imagine. Moving to number 5, New York. When people think of New York, they picture Manhattan and nothing else. Towering skyscrapers, Wall Street trading floors, expensive everything from apartments to coffee. But millions of New Yorkers actually live far from that urban jungle, in upstate towns and suburban communities that promised affordability and escape from big city chaos. Those promises are breaking right now under the weight of property taxes. New York has the second highest property taxes in America, behind only New Jersey. The average homeowner pays $6,827 per year statewide. But that average masks the true extremes. In Westchester County, just north of the city, average property tax bills exceed $17,000 annually. Even in supposedly affordable upstate regions, taxes consume household budgets at genuinely alarming rates. Entire communities are hollowing out before our eyes. Buffalo has lost population for decades straight. Syracuse struggles to attract businesses. Rochester cannot keep young graduates from fleeing after college. Cities that once thrived on manufacturing now struggle with shrinking populations and collapsing tax bases. Those residents who remain loyally pay more every single year to fund services designed for populations twice the current size. It is a death spiral playing out in slow motion across upstate New York. Retirees are fleeing New York by the tens of thousands every year without fail. They head to Florida, the Carolinas, Arizona, Tennessee, anywhere that does not charge them 5 figures annually, just to own a home they already purchased and maintained for decades. The homes they leave behind sit empty and unmaintained. property values drop neighborhood by neighborhood, and those still holding on stubbornly watch their equity vanish into thin air. New York's STAR program offers some nominal relief on paper, but the savings rarely exceed a few $100s for most homeowners. When property tax bills run into 5 figures, a $200 annual discount feels more like an insult than meaningful help. Albany keeps promising comprehensive reform. Homeowners keep waiting with dwindling patience, and the exodus out of New York continues accelerating year after year. Number 4 is Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania was supposed to be the affordable East Coast alternative that made financial sense, close enough to major cities like New York and Washington for commuting, lower costs than neighboring New Jersey, a Rust Belt revival waiting to happen as manufacturing returned. But property taxes averaging $3,442 per year are systematically crushing that narrative into dust. Towns throughout the suburban rings of Philadelphia and Pittsburgh are bleeding residents steadily. Property taxes keep rising year after year, while wages stay stubbornly flat. Young families who purchased homes expecting stability and equity growth now find themselves financially trapped. They cannot sell without taking painful losses. They cannot stay without feeling constant financial strain that affects every other decision they make. School districts in Pennsylvania operate with remarkable independence from each other. Each district sets its own tax rate based on its own budget needs. Some districts charge more than 2% of assessed home value annually. Others approach an almost unbelievable 3%. Homeowners in the wrong district face bills that dwarf their neighbors living just a few miles away across invisible boundary lines. The lottery of which district your home falls in can mean thousands of dollars difference every year. The state's heavy reliance on local property taxes to fund public education creates massive and growing inequality. Wealthy districts in affluent suburbs generate abundant revenue without high rates. Poor districts in struggling communities struggle desperately and raise rates on residents who can least afford increases. The system actively punishes the very people it was designed to protect and educate. Senior citizens face particular and growing hardship in Pennsylvania. The state offers property tax and rent rebates for eligible seniors meeting certain criteria. But the income limits are strict and exclude many. The rebates themselves are capped at modest amounts. A few $100s of annual relief means almost nothing when property tax bills are climbing by thousands of dollars over time. The promise of affordable East Coast living was always more marketing than reality. Pennsylvania proves it every tax season. Why do you think politicians keep raising property taxes every single year, but never honestly talk about where all that money actually goes? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Now at number 3, Ohio. Ohio markets itself proudly as the heart of it all. Cleveland on the lake, Cincinnati on the river, Columbus growing as a tech hub, cities throughout the state promising revitalization, affordability, and new beginnings. But property taxes averaging $3,256 per year tell a completely different story. One of communities where good jobs vanished, but tax obligations never did. The manufacturing collapse of past decades hit Ohio harder than almost any other state in America. Factories that employed entire towns closed their gates permanently. Populations shrank as workers followed jobs elsewhere. Property values collapsed in some areas to fractions of their former worth. But local governments still desperately needed revenue to function, so they raised rates on whoever remained behind. Homeowners who stayed loyal to their struggling communities got punished financially for that loyalty. Visit cities like Youngstown and Dayton today, and entire neighborhoods sit visibly abandoned. Houses that once sheltered families literally sell for $1 at auction just to get someone responsible for paying the accumulated back taxes. Meanwhile, in suburbs where values manage to hold steady or recover, assessments keep climbing higher every cycle. Ohio's dysfunctional property tax system creates losers everywhere you look. Nobody wins except the tax collectors. Retirees on genuinely fixed incomes face impossible choices that nobody should have to make. Medication or property taxes. Groceries for the month or property taxes. Heating the house through Ohio winters or property taxes. The homestead exemption provides modest relief for qualifying seniors. But modest relief does not cut it when your Social Security check barely covers bills that keep rising regardless of your income situation. The Buckeye State's affordability is ultimately a myth for anyone actually living there long-term and paying attention. Young buyers from expensive coastal cities see low purchase prices and assume they have found the deal of a lifetime. Then the first full property tax bill arrives, then the second year's increase. By year 3, they finally understand the trap they walked into eyes wide open. Ohio is not actually cheap. It just cleverly hides the true ongoing cost until you are already legally and financially committed. At number 2, Illinois. Illinois was once genuinely the land of opportunity in the American heartland. Chicago's suburbs in particular represented the American dream, made real and tangible. Good public schools consistently ranked nationally. Safe tree-lined streets perfect for raising children. Rising home values that built generational wealth. But property taxes averaging $5,197 per year have systematically turned that dream into a waking nightmare. And the situation is getting measurably worse every single year. The numbers coming out of Illinois are genuinely staggering when you examine them closely. In Cook County alone, which includes Chicago and its immediate suburbs, the average property tax bill now exceeds $6,000 annually. In some of the collar counties surrounding Cook, bills routinely hit $8,000, $10,000, even $15,000 every single year. Current homeowners are paying more in annual property taxes than their parents originally paid for their entire mortgages decades ago. Behind these crushing bills sits a pension crisis that absolutely nobody in Springfield can solve. Illinois state and local governments owe more than $200 billion in unfunded pension liabilities to current and future retirees. That astronomical sum has to come from somewhere eventually. And property owners represent the easiest political target with the least ability to fight back. Every budget shortfall at the state or local level translates directly into higher assessments and climbing effective tax rates for homeowners. Entire neighborhoods throughout metropolitan Chicago are emptying out visibly. South suburbs that once commanded premium prices, and waiting lists now sit stagnant with unsold inventory. For sale signs multiply on blocks. Qualified buyers vanish entirely, and those homeowners still holding on watch their equity drain into a public pension system that ironically may never actually pay out the retirement benefits it owes to workers. The exodus out of Illinois shows absolutely no signs of slowing whatsoever. The state population has declined every year for nearly a decade running. People are not just casually moving away. They are actively fleeing to other states. And they are leaving behind homes that, increasingly, nobody wants to purchase at any price. Because buying in Illinois means inheriting a property tax burden with no ceiling. In Illinois, the fundamental math of homeownership no longer works. And everyone who can possibly leave is leaving as fast as they can. And finally, at number 1, New Jersey. New Jersey holds the unenviable and undisputed title of highest property taxes anywhere in the United States. And the gap is not even remotely close. The average New Jersey homeowner pays $9,527 per year in property taxes alone. In wealthy towns throughout Bergen, Morris, and Essex counties, average household bills exceed $15,000 annually. Families who have owned their homes for multiple generations are being systematically taxed completely out of their own neighborhoods. Consider carefully what those numbers mean in real practical terms. Nearly $10,000 leaves your bank account every single year before you pay. A penny toward your mortgage principal, before homeowners' insurance premiums, before utility bills, before home maintenance and repairs, before absolutely anything else associated with ownership. That works out to over $800. Extracted every single month just for the legal privilege of owning property inside New Jersey's borders. The property tax burden in New Jersey has driven an exodus that shows absolutely no signs of slowing or reversing. Tens of thousands of residents pack up and leave every single year without looking back. They head south to Florida and the Carolinas. They head west to Arizona and Nevada. They go literally anywhere that does not charge them more in annual property taxes than many states charge for an entire modest house. Retirees throughout New Jersey face the cruelest math of all. Someone who paid off their modest home 40 years ago, after decades of mortgage payments, might now owe more annually in property taxes than their original monthly mortgage payment ever was. Fixed retirement incomes simply cannot absorb increases that climb 3, 4, 5% or more every single year, compounding. Savings accounts carefully built up over decades for healthcare or gifts to grandchildren instead flow entirely into insatiable municipal budget demands. New Jersey's absurdly fragmented government structure makes any meaningful reform virtually impossible to achieve politically. Over 500 separate municipalities, over 600 independent school districts, countless special authorities, utility districts, and commissions. Each governmental body sets its own annual budget according to its own needs. Each demands its own dedicated funding stream, and all of that financial obligation ultimately lands directly on property owners who have no choice but to pay or sell. The Garden State has genuinely become a place where owning property is a financial liability rather than an asset building wealth. Every year you choose to stay costs significantly more than the year before. Every year your home equity grows more slowly than your accumulated tax bill. This is precisely what tax-driven economic collapse looks like up close. It is happening right now in real time, and New Jersey is leading the entire nation directly into that abyss. Your home should build wealth over time, not drain it away year after year. Property taxes represent the hidden cost that nobody in real estate honestly talks about until it is far too late to matter. Now you understand exactly which states are pushing longtime homeowners to flee their own communities. Use this information wisely before making any major real estate decision that affects your family's financial future. Subscribe now, and if you are watching on TV, tap your remote so you never get blindsided again.